All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Book Club on October 21st, 2021, our first foray into Discord voice chat meeting instead of Twitch. So, yeah, it's book time.
Yay. I'm happy we can have more friends with us today. This is wonderful. I'm excited about this new format.
I am too. I've never, confession, I think I probably said this when we started this whole thing, but I've never done, another book club. But, I have this image of just, people in chairs in a circle with, snacks and stuff. Just,
Wine.
getting into discussions.
Usually there's wine.
At my local library one, that is what we did. At the library, yeah.
Perfect.
Very good. All right, so yeah, we read Graveyard Book by Neil Gaiman this month. And oh no, you know what, Demon Fire? If we could provide snacks through the internet, I would. we can only offer internet cookies. So yeah, okay. First of all, so we had the three different formats that were available to us, right? Four, I think, if you count the two different audio things, the straight audiobook versus the what's the word I'm looking for, with the different actors and stuff. So we probably all had
full cast.
Yeah, so we all probably had slightly different experiences. For example, when I looked up the discussion questions for this book, and one of the questions was, how do the illustrations contribute to your reading of the Graveyard Book? I went, what? Illustrations?
Are there illustrations?
Yes.
I've literally never read it by holding it in my hands before.
Yeah, no, I mean,
I've only ever listened to it because I'm obsessed with Neil Gaiman's dulcet tones.
It was very good, even without the little bonus ominous banjo at the start of chapters. Neil Gaiman's voice was worth it.
So that's the thing. That's the thing with the audiobook, is that there's a score.
Right.
But yeah, it looks like there's two different not even counting the graphic novel.
Right.
There's two different versions of illustrated book, and Dave McKean is one, and Chris Riddell is the other. Which, those of you who had the physical books, which ones did you have?
Pretty sure mine was Chris Riddell.
Okay, I looked at both of them. Chris Riddell's illustrations look I never did Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark growing up, but that reminds me very much of that.
Not as photorealistic, but yeah.
Kind of a cross between that and Series of Unfortunate Events is what I'm seeing in the illustrations that I just Googled.
Yeah. And Dave McKean's is not as I don't even know how you describe, not as grotesque. I don't know. They still look pretty cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting because, I don't really visualize stuff that much when I read or listen to someone read, but the images I did have in my head, I think were kind of almost not Disney-fied, but close to. If someone, or maybe if Studio Ghibli adapted this book into a movie, that was in my head, and I'm just I mean, I guess they are still all dead people. I didn't really think about that.
I think they contributed to the creepiness of it.
Yeah.
And I mean,
yeah, no, Hermione, I was surprised when you were saying that you found it so creepy, because I was like, really? I thought it was just kind of cute, but looking at these illustrations, I definitely see that more.
Yes, they're much more understandable. That would weird me out of it too. I'm seeing hold on, let me pop the picture of the tattooed man into voice chat.
I mean, threatening children. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. First
Okay.
chapter goes into the crypt. Comes pretty early.
That would I think that would work for most people to keep them out.
So maybe this is probably something I'm gonna talk about a lot, but I think that one of the things that I get a lot, especially out of the audiobook, is just how like safe Neil Gaiman's voice makes me feel. And so I don't know, throughout the whole book, like anytime he's in the graveyard, like I never felt like worried or stressed. It just Bod just felt safe. It felt like home.
Oh
You know?
yeah,
And
no,
I
absolutely.
think that's like one of the big themes is like home and family and all of that. Just really, I don't know.
Yeah, no, it is interesting, like, how much of it was Neil Gaiman's writing versus Neil Gaiman's voice, but you're right, like, you know, okay, yeah, Silas is a vampire and is just, like, could make you forget stuff or kill you in an instant, but it's just like, oh, but he's so, he's so nice, I want him to take care of me.
He's the guardian.
He is. I don't know, maybe there's a certain appeal even in the, like, you know, when there's this, like, person or person-like creature who's, like, usually dangerous, but you know they're different with you, like, that in itself has its own appeal. I think sometimes we run into that in trouble in real life when you have, like, people who fall for, like, you know, like the bad boy stereotype. Like, I think that might be, I was not one of those girls, and I'm like, okay, I can kind of see where you would have gotten the appeal and not just gone instantly, this is a bad idea, why am I in this relationship?
Yeah, there's something special about being chosen by someone who's dangerous.
Yeah. But yeah, the people of the... Okay, so let's talk about the ghosts, first of all. Because obviously Silas was, like, a separate category from most of the graveyard folks. So, yeah, like, they're dead, obviously. But mostly the experience is just, like, being raised by some... Like, a bunch of time travelers, basically. Like... I mean, yeah, no, just like you got, or more, it was almost more like Bod was the time traveler sometimes. Just like gets plunked down in an 1800s classroom. I'm like, all right, it's time to go to work. He's like, oh, okay, I'll try. Or like he didn't know anything different.
I also loved, like, in that when he went to school and it's like history was his favorite class, and then he'd say things like, "Oh, actually it went like this," and his teacher's like, "What are you talking about? Stop making things up."
You know he would have opinions. Yeah, no, I don't even remember if I think they had like a single example of something he said. It's just like, but I wanted more examples of just like Bod laying down the true facts in school. Oh, I don't know. Demon's Fire is saying that reminded him of or them of a Lovecraft story. I've never read any Lovecraft, but what it reminded me of was the bit in Avatar when, you know, Team Avatar is like hanging out in the Fire Nation, and the one episode where Aang goes to school at the fire thing, and he's just like, but the Air nomads didn't have an RV, which, you know, in this case, the difference was not propaganda based, probably. It was just the little details that get lost to time. But the tomb. I wonder if Lovecraft is public domain by now,
Yeah,
right?
It's all free, yeah.
Yeah. Lovecraft. We'll have to read that later.
Lovecraft would be fun for October, but maybe not a good choice for Hermione.
Yeah, maybe. I feel like we had another idea for October. I will figure it out later. Well, this would have been a good choice for October. Oops. Yeah, okay. I don't have to necessarily lead this one since it's a little less formal. If any of the rest of you have like specific things that like really stood out to you about the book or characters that you particularly liked, like Silas. can speak up.
I've talked about this with at least one other book that we've done, but I really appreciate world building where the magic that takes place has an internal consistency, but it's never directly explained. Like, there's nobody here whose job is the exposition. So you just kind of are aware of all these powers that the kid is developing, but at no point does he like, hey, can I do this specifically? And they explain, oh no, for you see, ghosts can only do the following 12 things.
Yeah, like all the stuff that like the ghosts were trying to teach him, and I'm like, wait, is that something he's actually supposed to do? Is like it took me a while to figure out that fading was like fading out of people's like awareness, not like physically phasing through things, which, you know, he could do in the graveyard, but
Yeah, to me it makes the difference between fantasy and magical realism.
Yeah, showing, not telling the world, which I really like too.
I really like that they did that with like even, you know, like Silas. Like they never said the word vampire in the entire book, but like they were still able to get across.
I just leave it up to you to figure it out. I love that.
They were a little more. They did actually use the term werewolf with Miss Lepestu, right? But like it took a while to get there. Which, if I had seen the way her name was spelled, I might have like picked up on that. Like, oh, that looks like lupine.
No, she's not a werewolf. She's a hound of God. Which they don't specifically explain either exactly what that is. They just say that's what she is.
I thought they had a line where it was like some cultures like would call her a werewolf.
Yeah, it sounds kind of familiar actually. Yeah, in both of those things.
Yeah, Demon Fire. The last chapter. Yeah, it's not until the very end. They were like, well, in case you didn't realize it, here's 12 more hints that he's a vampire.
In case, you know, the fact that he slept in a... Well, I guess a crypt is not the same thing as a coffin. I don't... You know what? I need to actually look up what a crypt actually is, because, like,
He sleeps during the day, is awake at night. Very powerful, has hypnotic powers.
Yeah, it's like I didn't realize until the reflection of the table, and there was no there was no reflection in the table, and I was like, oh wait, what? Okay then.
Beautiful, yeah. There's a lot of different ways that you can come at understanding his character and who and what he is.
Okay. Demon Fire, I'll go ahead and read yours out since, for the sake of the recording. Demon Fire says, I'm curious if anyone else got the same sense as me. I felt like the first few chapters almost felt like separate vignettes that were only loosely connected by being the same characters, but didn't feel like chapters of one story. Then towards the end, at the same time as you're learning about the prophecy the Jacks are following, suddenly all the different events of the vignettes got connected into like, here's how fate decided the prophecy turned out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it did feel more like... I mean, this whole book to me just feels like, you know, if Bod sat down and, like, wrote his memoirs, and, like, when you think about your childhood, like, I feel like there's only so many things you remember, and they probably are just, like, separate episodes that are just, like, here's that one time I blank, and... Yeah, you probably the ones that you do remember are the ones that sort of connected to bigger things that happened in your life.
Yeah, I think it's actually related to Phil's observation in that, like, you know, Gaiman kind of like lays out the world and the story for you, but he doesn't necessarily connect the dots for you. So, you know, it's when you move from chapter to chapter, it's not like some years later or these years later, this stuff happened. But instead, he's showing you these different scenes, these different memories, and then you kind of like glean from, you know, just like what's going on in the story, like how old Bod is, how much time has passed, and all of that.
Right, which was harder when he didn't understand what age was. I love that bit when he meets Scarlet and she's like, how old are you? And he's like, what?
Everyone he knows is the same age all the time.
What is this concept of aging you speak of?
Oh yeah, that was funny. I was like, she asked about the birthday and like cake, and he was, "What are these things that you're saying to me?"
Those culture clashes when you least expect it. But yeah, no, it's like, oh, yeah, go ahead.
My favorite character is the witch. Just wanted to put that out there.
Liza. She's really great.
You can tell that, because did we get an actual age for her? Like, or
she's like 16.
Okay, because in my brain she was like 15, and that was more just like she's acting like a teenage girl.
Yeah. Well, that's another, shown, not told thing is you can see as Bod gets older and he, like, reaches her age, and she starts acting weird.
She likes him.
Yeah, you can tell that she likes him. But, she's dead and he's not. And so because she's a teenage girl, she gets real pouty about it. Bless her heart.
Which, I mean, like, that is such a thing that, like, it gets explored a little bit in stories as well, where you have, like, an immortal character, but just, like, because it doesn't really actually happen otherwise in real life, we sort of take for granted, I think, this whole, like, everyone around us is aging at the same time, and, like, when you make a friend your age, you are going through the next part of life, like the stages of life together. Like, sure, maybe you're getting like married at different ages or not married or kids, but like if you're 30 and I'm 30 and 10 years from now I'm gonna be 40 and you're gonna be 40, not like you're stuck behind at 30 and will only ever get the 30-year-old's experiences. And just that, like, the idea of Bod not having that at all, basically, through this book is just so wild. Like, he could have, like, I think he gets a sense with, his 2 meetings with Scarlet, maybe, that, like, oh, this could be this way. Or, like, maybe with the kids at school, but he didn't really seem to, like, connect with anyone at school as emotionally.
Yeah, Demon Fire's pointing out they did show this off a few different ways with different younger ghosts as Bod aged past each of them. You can see like who he plays with at different times because they're different ages, and then he grows and they don't, and you can't really connect with them anymore.
Yeah, like that just seems like it would be very lonely in some ways, even though he has this whole graveyard full of people. And then, of course, he ages out of all of them at the end of the book.
Oh my god.
It was so sad. Like,
so sad.
Growing up is always sad to some extent. Like, I cried. Like, I cried in the shower the first night I was at college. Like, I was just like, I'm all by myself now. And then I was too busy to be sad. But, like, I knew I still had, like, my parents to go home and visit. But, like, it kind of feels like he could just never go back at all. I'm just,
Not until his life is over. And even then, only if he manages to get himself buried.
Right.
In a specific graveyard.
I mean, maybe, if he ends up somewhere else accidentally, maybe, like, Silas can at least, like, run messages between, but, yeah.
Yeah. I agree with that, Demon Fire. That was also really sad.
But they couldn't stay friends with... Although, I don't, like... It is unclear whether she would have stayed friends with him is the thing. Like...
But she never got the chance, to, like, process this, like, incredible trauma she's just been through. It was just immediately removed from her, so... We don't really know what might have happened.
It is, I do think it's interesting having that second bit with Scarlet, because, like, it's the only it's the only character point of view that seems to suggest that, like, Bod's become something that maybe he shouldn't have. Like, I mean, he didn't kill anyone, strictly speaking. Like, but, like, that, you know, banishing someone to another realm forever is still, like, a pretty serious thing. And, like, yeah, he did it in self-defense. But, like, it's still kind of a dark thing, you know?
Yeah.
Although I don't know if we ever... did we get any closure on what happened to the one that fell down the trap?
No.
Like, Silas was
He's
just
still
like,
down there.
I'll go do something about it.
He's still down there.
He's just fallen.
I live here now, I guess. Which, I mean, I felt like I was unclear on how much, like, the Manjacks were just regular people who, like, figured out some level of magic, right? Like, they weren't in themselves supernatural creatures, I think.
They didn't seem to be. They had some magic at their disposal, but I don't think that they were, like, immortal or anything special.
Right. Like, it's not like it's been the same set of Jacks for however long the organization has existed. It's, like... Sorry.
I'm not so sure about that. Because the man Jack himself, the main Jack, doesn't really seem to age in the, like, 15 years or so from the beginning of the story to the end. You know, and when he's posing as Mr. Frost, he's using basically like a glamour to make himself appear older. So I'm not so sure about that one.
See, I wasn't clear with the, like, how much of his older appearance as Frost, like, I couldn't tell if the gray hair was part of the glamour or not, or if, like, he had actually aged to some extent and just, like, you know, worked that into.
He like changes back when he sheds the persona. Maybe he did. I could be wrong.
This is what happens when we don't
look
have copies to reference. We just have audio memories in our brain. I thought that, I mean, we've already talked about Neil Gaiman is really good at, like, you know, giving, like, just the right amount of hints. But, I mean, I think I figured pretty early on that I didn't think he was the same Jack. I just thought he was another Jack. But, like, okay, first of all, why are you putting this character in that, like, has never appeared before? And I think whenever they're like, Jay Frost, and I'm like, well, okay. We're all old enough that we, you know, are familiar with the concept of Jack Frost. I don't know. I feel like younger readers would have a harder time picking up on that. So that was probably more of a big reveal surprise for them when the time came. But they did a really good job of, like, making him a character who felt like someone you could trust.
I don't know if the ones that went into the ghoul place are definitely dead. You know, like Bod gives them some pointers.
Yeah, it sounded like they could survive there. Like, I don't think they could ever come back to...
I don't think it would be easy.
You mentioned an oasis, like...
Yeah.
I mean, the Jacks have to be pretty, like, resilient, right? Like, not in a good way, maybe, but... Bod was also, like...
He was, like, 8.
Yeah, like, he was a little kid when he went there, so, like...
And had been kidnapped.
Yes, and, yeah, had only barely been listening to the correct instructions and relevant knowledge he needed.
Mm-hmm.
That one almost felt like the most... Because that was the only part that didn't take place in either the world of the graveyard or, like, our world. And that almost felt like a different book to me in some way, which maybe helps, you know, drive home. They're just like, oh, I am very out of my depth here a bit, but I don't know. I didn't enjoy it as much, but Maybe that's just because I love all the graveyard people too much.
Wait, which part was out of the world?
The ghouls, when he got kidnapped by the ghouls and taken through the ghoul gate gravestone into like that different world with where there were the flying things too.
Yeah, that was definitely sketched. And it was like, is this really happening? I know he doesn't die
and it's
here,
like
but
it's the first time we see him leave his place of safety, though. So, I mean, it is scary and unfamiliar.
Okay.
It seemed especially dangerous because like there weren't any other ghosts there. Like the Hound of God could follow him down there to save him eventually, but like it felt like he was very removed all of a sudden.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like, there very well could be other, like, if there's a second world separate from the living and the dead world, like, what if there's a third? What if there's how big? Ooh, here's a question. I've never read Coraline. Does this take place in the same universe as Coraline, though? Because, like, I know the bits of Coraline that I know about, like, she goes to a different world, right? That's where the, quote, other parents are. Like, is if things happen in a real weird way, could Bod go to that world? Where's my Gaiman cinematic universe?
I could absolutely see the Fae being a part of this world, though. Something about, like, I don't know, you get the sense of kind of old magic in Europe.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, if you told me the lady on the gray horse was actually a Fae, I would totally believe you.
I think she was death.
Well, okay, having seen the illustration now, I go with that a bit more, but she didn't seem...
No, but she talks about how, like, he asked if he could ride her horse, and she said, all people do in time. Like,
oh, that's right.
Yeah. Ride her horse away into the night, and she's the link between the dead and the living, so during the Dance of the Dead, it makes sense that she would kind of be the centerpiece.
Okay, is the word always pronounced macabre, or were they just doing it so it would rhyme with stuff? Because I swear I thought it was macabre.
Macabre.
Yeah, no, that was just the rhyme.
Okay. I was like, but.
Oh, man. Phil, Anansi Boys was actually the very first Gaiman book that I read, and I was not ready for it. It
So funny.
stressed me out so bad.
Oh, yeah.
Just like bad things kept happening to this poor guy. And then I went back and read American Gods, and I think I probably would appreciate Anansi Boys better now.
It like they did American Gods, but hopefully they do a more a better job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, kind of went off the rails a little bit.
So this is the first, like, Neil Gaiman only book I've read, so it's interesting to look back at. I don't actually remember the random middle grades book that I read back in the day very well, but it's interesting to look back at Good Omens and, like, have more perspective on, like, what aspects of it were Pratchett and which ones were him, and, like...
Mm-hmm. You can really see the marriage between the two of them in that book if you've read them both.
Yeah. The humor is definitely more Pratchett. Like, Pratchett is our funny guy. Is our satire guy, but just the, like, making the not normal stuff feel, like, cozy and sweet. Like, I feel like a lot of the stuff to do with Adam, right, was the kid's name in Good Omens. Like, I feel like a lot of that was Gaiman, just like I want a dog, sends a hellhound. Yay, dog! And then it becomes the good puppy.
What were you gonna say, Phil?
This one has a lot of shades of a much older game called Neverwhere, which is apparently a book that he wrote based on a TV show that he helped make. But it's very similar, kind of the magical underworld of a city and stuff happening on both planes.
Yeah, that's reminiscent of Sandman too, which I believe is his very first publication. Which I read like the first few issues of, but I haven't read the whole thing, but would really love to sometime.
The early issues were kind of strange because he was trying to marry the DC concept with what he wanted to do before he just kind of pushed that out of the way and kept going.
Yeah, I would love to dig into that sometime. I'm excited that they're producing it though, and that he's pretty involved with it, I think. You sound skeptical.
It's not the first time that they've tried. It seems like the furthest along that one of the attempts has gotten, and they did a very good job with Good Omens, so I think that he's got enough clout now to be able to say whether or not something should happen or whether production can meddle with it.
I think it's funny that he swore up and down that he would never do a Good Omens Part 2, and they're doing it.
Are they really? I missed that. Like,
yeah,
because he's come out and said that like he feels that they can do what he and Terry Pratchett long ago discussed would have been a sequel if they ever made one.
Okay. That makes me feel a little bit better then. I always get weirded out when like a adaptation goes like runs out of source material and set like not like
whatever.
I mean not like Game of Thrones where like, you know, there's more source material coming and it hasn't come out yet, though that's a different discussion. But like I didn't actually watch any of Handmaid's Tale Hulu stuff, but like I knew that they did the entirety of the book in season 1, and I'm like, what do you mean you're doing a season 2? Where are you getting this from? Was Atwood involved in that one? Like, I guess if the author's still alive and, like, is working with you on it, that's okay. But, oh gosh, no, I know what okay, this is not a book. This is a musical. Are any of you aware of the sequel to Phantom of the Opera?
There's a sequel?
There's a sequel musical, and it's based on a completely different book because there was no book sequel to Phantom of the Opera. And also, apparently, Andrew Lloyd Webber was secretly a Christine Phantom shipper the whole time and was like, I need to... Apparently, Rao, you know, got into gambling and was a drunkard and therefore is a terrible husband so that I could pair him off with... And also, Christine actually cheated with him on, like, the night before her wedding. So, actually, her 10-year-old kid is the Phantoms, and, like, they're in America for some reason, and it's vaudeville. And, like... Oh my gosh.
Yikes.
What happened here?
The cursed child god. Yeah. The worst part is that Rowling was actually involved with the cursed child. It's so bad. So bad.
Yeah, no, it's I'm not going to say it's not possible to do a good, you know, extension of a work that didn't really have anything after it, but like you gotta step carefully.
What was so surprising to me about it is that like the reason Gaiman swore up and down he would never do more of Good Omens is because he had like promised Pratchett on his deathbed that if they ever did it he would be super involved and make sure they get it right, and it turned out to be like a huge undertaking and took like a big, you know, like emotional and personal toll just like on his life to be that committed to the production of a big series like that. So, you know, if he's saying that they can do what they would have done for the sequel, I can only imagine he would be like just as involved, if not more, because they don't even have the original source material to work off of. now. So yeah, we'll see. Let's see what comes of it.
If if we don't have anything else like Graveyard Yard books specific we want to chat about, I feel like that might seg really nicely into chatting about adaptations in general, because I know I have a couple ones coming up in the next year or two that I'm very excited about.
Dune.
Oh, not even Dune. I've never seen Dune or read Dune. I might see it, but no, the one, I think Lord of the Rings were still Lord of the Rings. Sorry, put that in quotes because it's Middle Earth. It's the Silmarillion. I'm still very excited about, or interested in, I should say. I'm not quite 100% sure that they'll do what they should with it, but having some of the, because I don't know if any of y'all have tried to read the Silmarillion, but like it reads like a textbook. The like sort of creation story at the beginning I think is kind of interesting and done almost more like poetically, but then it gets real dry real fast, and I'm like, there's an interesting story here. I could tell there is. Why didn't you actually write it like a story? But no, coming up more soon is Wheel of Time is like finally getting an adaptation after like, oh gosh. So originally there was a like different company that had the adaptation rights to Wheel of Time, but they only had it for like 10 years, or like they had to do something within those 10 years to like keep up on it. So they made this like really half-efforted like 10-minute pilot episode that covers the prologue of the first book, and just like threw it on some channel at like 2 a.m. And I think they actually got in trouble with like the estate and the author's widow, and like basically were like, no, someone else has to have the rights now, and the people who actually do have it. And just all the they've been putting a lot of like teaser images and like 5-second clips on their Twitter page, especially in the last few months. And like I went from cautious to cautiously optimistic to I'm not enthusiastic yet, but I'm feeling really good about this. Like the stuff that they totally can change, like the appearance of characters, like it's a pretty diverse cast, but like the stuff that actually matters, like the plot, like really they seem to be doing. I'm excited. There. I'll talk for too long if I go on. Also, yes, that's right. I saw, like... have you seen a date on that, Phil, for Redwall?
No.
Okay.
What?
Redwall. Netflix. That's Netflix, right?
Is it animated?
It's the same team that did their recent Watership Down re-adaptation.
Interesting. So, Phil, I'm interested in your take on
I'm sorry. It's
Dune.
the same people who did Over the Garden Wall, the other one.
I just hope they have a jammin' opening. The first one had the first animated adaptation of Redwall had a really good opening, and it's still stuck in my head sometimes. Yes, Hermione, we can go back to the book. Sorry. Go for it.
Okay, so on my book cover, it says, or the back or something, it says, for ages 10 and up, and I was like reading this, oh, I'll be fine, right? And no, if it's 10 and up, why is this thing so like threatening children, and there's a bloody act or murder in the beginning of the book, and I just the actual scary things that happen in this, I would say at least PG-15 or something, because this is a lot for me to take in. Definitely the darkest book I've ever read.
I think kids can handle a lot, and it's not like the violence was graphic, but the way that kids learn to deal with like big ideas and scary things is by reading about them, because reading is like a really safe, controlled environment where you can come to it when you're ready, you can walk away from it if you're not. and you can imagine things. And then we talked about how, you know, there's some like scary things that happen, but around Bod, really for most of the story, is this kind of net of safety that was woven by the like power of the graveyard and Silas and all of that. So I don't know. To me, it really felt more like a safe place for him to kind of adventure and grow. And you know, with like the few times when he actually ventures beyond the graveyard, accepted, you know, in general, he's pretty safe. He can't be touched in the graveyard. But then a part of getting older is starting to explore beyond those safe boundaries and figuring out what you do when you don't have that safety net. And I think that's all like important stuff for kids to, you know, have some help in processing through a really good story.
And there are, like, I mean, obviously it varies kid by kid, but like just some kids like scary stuff, and like I think it's just that
true.
you know, the bye Hermione, thanks for coming. Like it's, you know, the sort of adrenaline junkies you get. These are the kids who like there's some lack of overlap there because I certainly do not like roller coasters. But like, you know, kids who like roller coasters, or people who like, you know, reading thrillers, or like just skydiving. I don't know, just like there's lots of different ways to get that adrenaline pumping, and sometimes a book is a nice, easy way to do that.
It's not going to be for everyone. I always encourage parents who are asking, like, is this appropriate for my kid? I'm like, well, you know your kid best.
Does your kid like scary stuff?
Yeah. Yeah. But then I like revert to my speech about it's important for kids to be able to process things.
Yeah, I think media or books that have scenes of peril, but not necessarily hard adult things like gore or language, are fine.
Mm-hmm.
We watched
I think
the Netflix series Sweet Tooth recently, which is made specifically for families to sit down and watch together. And there's a lot of like danger, but all of the really gross stuff happens off screen. You know, it's never pushed in your face or glorified. It's just like, oh yeah, by the way, everyone wants to kill you.
Yeah,
it's
no.
important not to underestimate kids. It's how they build resilience, is exposure to scary things.
Yeah, world is scary. They gotta learn how to process that. Shoot, something reminded me of something and I forgot it. I don't know, come back to me.
Something earlier? Were you gonna ask me something earlier, Max?
Oh, yeah, about Dune.
Yeah.
What do you think of what we've seen of the adaptation so far? Do you think it's going to be
read
good?
Dune earlier this year for the first time, and the whole time I was reading it, I was thinking, man, this book does not seem like one that you could film. So, interested for sure. It certainly looks like they've spent a lot of time getting the environments and the imagery to be gorgeous, which I think was one of the. It is a major part of the book, and that being done right can carry a lot of the rest because it it really seems like the way to film Dune is to just make the first Star Wars film. Like that's Dune but approachable. Desert planet, a kid who becomes kind of the galaxy savior. Very strange alien races. Because the Dune, the book, is not very action oriented at all.
No, it's really not.
More about politics and intonations of dialogue.
Yeah, for sure. We reread like the first half of it recently, and then got distracted by something else and never actually went back and finished it. But
and the sequels go off the rails.
Yeah, how much politics there was in it.
All I know is that the spice must flow.
Right. Yeah, I mean that's a big part. It's a big part of the economy in this universe. So
the sequels get into various depictions of different kinds of immortality, and it's a lot of fun. Again, things that I don't know would translate into film, and if they do, then Jason Momoa is going to be very busy.
Who does he play?
Duncan, Idaho.
Ah, interesting.
Yeah. Oh yeah, they're giant worms too, aren't there?
Yeah, and in book 4, somebody turns into one.
Oh boy.
It's really great.
we love us some body horror.
Yeah, it's a great book though. Definitely recommend.
I will put it on my, oh no, look at this list.
Yeah. I'm sitting here like in our little library right now as we're talking, just kind of like looking around at all of our books, and I've read most of them, but there's a good chunk here that I have not. That I should.
Do we want to start thinking about, so me and Mags have not like actually picked a book for next time. So we thought we definitely ahead of time thought, hey, let's get everyone's thoughts first, and not, hey, we don't have a book. Do either of you guys have like, you know, something a little on the shorter side? I would love to do a long book sometimes, but obviously that is a little harder to get through. That you think would make for good discussion. Bonus points if it's on Hoopla, so I could. The Hobbit would not be too long.
No, it's so good. I've restarted Loader recently. It's like my falling asleep audiobook. Which is really nice. But I could totally do The Hobbit.
I confess, I read The Hobbit in 6th grade, and then I read Lord of the Rings after that, and I liked Lord of the Rings so much more that I just proceeded to continually reread Lord of the Rings for the entirety of middle school. But I never went back to Hobbit, so I probably should someday. This could be a good excuse. So we'll put on the list to consider. We shall consider. It'd be a good reminder for what did they add to the nonsense that was.
The book is indeed shorter than the films. God.
I need to watch the.
Mad with power.
Maybe a little bit. I need to watch sometime because I know someone online has like basically taken all the bits from the 3 movies that were in fact in the books and just like edited them together into a single 4-hour film. And I need to watch that sometime because that like I think is actually the Hobbit movie we all wanted. I've never thought Lord of the Rings was a slog. I don't know. Maybe I just have more patience for slower pacing.
Listen, by the time I got to Return of the King when I was in middle school, and then for the 5th chapter in a row, Sam and Frodo were still just trekking through Mordor, I most certainly lost interest. And it was probably not until I was an adult until I actually went back and finished the books themselves.
How else are we supposed to prove that one can indeed not simply walk into Mordor? Oh gosh, yes, Tom Bombadil is his own thing. Yeah. Actually, if we are going to do Hobbit, we probably shouldn't like discuss all the Hobbit and things right now because we won't have anything to talk about when we actually do the Hobbit.
Tom Bombadil's not Hobbit, he's Fellowship.
Well, yes, technically he's Fellowship, but really he's a character from the greater scope of Middle-earth that just like makes a cameo. There's a really good website that like breaks down what the heck his deal is, and I can link to that if we do a book meeting on that. But I mean, I was about to say, do we have any other ideas so that we can actually like, if not, we could just go with that. But Mrs. Polifax, I have not heard of this one.
The author is Dorothy Gilman. and she was I don't know if she was actually a spy, but this was like the female James Bond series for a little while. And
Ooh.
it's
Oh.
the hook is that a retired old woman is bored and walks into the CIA and asks for a job, and through a comedy of errors becomes a spy. And the first couple of them are kind of slow. Like I would recommend starting around book 4, which I mean they're serials, so it's not going to be too jarring, I don't think. But
Yeah.
they get very fun, and they're I was introduced to them through a geography teacher, because since the author actually traveled to a lot of these places, she got a lot of the details right at the time. So she would just send Mrs. Polifax off to some country that was usually not featured very prominently in other media, like
Okay,
yeah,
so
around book 4 or 5 is where things start picking up, and they're not very long, and they're fun and kind of travelogues a little bit.
okay, so I don't think, for some reason, I don't think Hoopla has any of like the text versions of any of these books, but they have like 7 of them on audiobook. Well, Libby is more dependent on your actual library having paid for the Hoopla is the one where like everyone has the same selection regardless of library. Libby is the one that's like, what did your library actually pay for? So
yeah, but Libby is so often just gonna have like a much better selection anyway, because Hoopla's library is pretty limited. So folks could check.
I mean, I'm just saying, I'm searching my library's Libby, and I'm getting nothing for the author's name at all. So,
I think I
well, get a bigger Metro library card.
We're already a large suburban
I'm sure
one.
these are long out of print. Like the last one was done in 2000, and the author's I don't think she's alive anymore.
Right. Yeah.
I like the idea of kind of a mystery thriller type thing, though.
Yeah, it doesn't have
or
to be
something kind of cozy.
Yeah, I think we'll put that one on the list for another month, I think, just to like look a little bit more into how like we could even decide like we'll do that like after Hobbit, and then like that would give more people time to get it like interlibrary loaned if they need to. But yeah, all in favor of doing Hobbit for next month?
Sure.
Cool.
Sure.
Palm for Mrs. Halifax is one of the audiobooks on Hoopla, so that should be a workable one. All right, cool. And then I will go ahead and in a sec we'll have the Wind meet again in the book club channel. Would probably be the same time next month. I imagine Saturday will probably be when people are available again, but we'll do the whole check just in case. So yeah, thanks everyone for coming out and just sitting down with us and chatting, and this is nice. It's nice to have a little more chill of an environment, a little more personal. Yeah. The hobbits, to Isengard, to Isengard.
Oh, God.
All right, everyone. Thanks for coming.